The planet Zorth was far from the bustling cities of the galactic core. It was an isolated, untamed world, a place that had little to offer except harsh landscapes, dense jungles, and a few primitive life forms. But for some, it was a perfect place to hide away from the turmoil of intergalactic politics. Among these was a young alien girl named Lyra, a member of the Ylian species, known for their long lifespans, emerald green skin, and piercing violet eyes. She had been stranded on Zorath after her ship malfunctioned, and now she found herself wandering the wilderness with no hope of rescue. For weeks, she had learned to navigate the treacherous terrain of the planet, learning which creatures were safe to avoid and which were to be feared. But no matter how many times she explored, there was always one sound that made her blood run cold: the guttural growl of the beast. The beast was a terrifying creature, larger than most predators on Zorath, with glowing red eyes and sharp, serrated claws that could tear through metal with ease. It was a nightmare, one that the native creatures and even the few settlers who dared to survive on the planet spoke of in hushed whispers. Lyra had heard tales of its terrifying strength and vicious attacks, and she had always done everything in her power to stay as far from it as possible. But today, as she trekked through the dense jungle in search of food, her path collided with that of the beast. It appeared without warning. The sound of crashing branches echoed through the jungle, followed by a deafening roar. Lyra's heart leaped in her chest as she instinctively froze, trying to make herself as small and invisible as possible. The beast was close, too close. She could hear its massive footsteps thundering through the underbrush, and her body was paralyzed with fear. Her first instinct was to run, to flee as fast as her legs would carry her, but the beast was faster. Before she could even turn, a massive clawed hand shot out from the shadows and grabbed her by the ankle. She screamed in terror as it yanked her off the ground, her body flailing helplessly as she was dragged closer to the creature's gaping maw. It opened its mouth, its jagged teeth glistening with saliva, and Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she prepared for the end. But then, something unexpected happened. The beast suddenly stopped, its growl turning into a confused grunt. Lyra blinked in disbelief as she saw a figure dart from the shadows, a human, no older than 25, armed with a strange weapon that seemed to glow with an eerie light. Without hesitation, he rushed forward, diving directly into the path of the beast. The human wasn't afraid. In fact, he was charging directly at the creature, his weapon raised high. The beast hesitated, its eyes narrowing at the intruder, and for a brief moment, it seemed to consider its next move. But the human didn't give it a chance to think. He lunged forward, his weapon slicing through the air with a powerful force. And before Lyra could process what was happening, the beast's growl turned into a pained roar. The human didn't stop. He pressed on, relentlessly attacking the beast with precision, as though he had done this many times before. Within moments, the beast was writhing on the ground, blood pouring from its wounds. Lyra stared, her mouth agape in shock, her fear now replaced with confusion. The beast, the terrifying monster that had haunted her nightmares, was being defeated by this human. This strange, fearless human. She had heard of humans before, but never in a context like this. They were a species from another world, known for their resilience and adaptability, but never did she imagine they would take on the beast of Zorath, a creature that had claimed the lives of countless travelers. She watched, mesmerized, as the human continued his assault, moving with fluid precision. With one final blow, the beast collapsed, its enormous body hitting the ground with a thud. The human stood over the fallen creature, panting with exhaustion. His weapon, now covered in dark blood, hummed with an eerie glow. He turned toward Lyra, his face still masked in a hood, and for the first time, she saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm, but laced with an intensity that surprised her. Lyra didn't know what to say. She was still processing the sight before her. She had been terrified of the beast, and yet, here was this human who had killed it with ease. She nodded slowly, still in shock. "Why did you save me?" she asked, her voice trembling. The human's eyes softened, and he smiled slightly, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I wasn't saving you. I was just getting my meal." Lyra blinked in confusion. "Your meal?" The human nodded, walking toward the beast's body, which was already beginning to twitch in its final moments. With a calmness that sent a chill down her spine, he pulled a small blade from his belt and began to cut into the beast's carcass. The sight was brutal, but what truly shocked Lyra was the look of satisfaction on the human's face as he began to carve into the creature's flesh. He wasn't just defeating the beast, he was devouring it. She had seen many alien species, many creatures, and heard their customs. But humans were different. They weren't just survivors. They were hunters in a way that was almost foreign to her. She watched in stunned silence as the human began to slice pieces of the beast's meat, bringing them to his mouth and eating them as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're eating it?" she asked, incredulous. The human paused mid-bite, looking up at her with a raised eyebrow. "You've never seen a human devour its prey?" "No," Lyra admitted, shaking her head. "I didn't know humans ate like this." The human chuckled softly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "We don't always. But when you're stranded on a planet like this, it's either the beast or you. I'd prefer the beast." Lyra was still processing it all. The human, despite his initial appearance as a threat, had just saved her life, and was now devouring the very thing she had feared most. It was a strange mix of awe and horror. But there was also something else, something she couldn't quite place. "You're not afraid of it?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, I've seen much worse." As the days passed, Lyra and the human, whose name she learned was Kale, formed an unlikely partnership. He taught her how to survive on Zorth, showing her how to navigate the wilds, how to hunt, and how to make use of the planet's resources. In return, Lyra shared her knowledge of the planet's history, the customs of her people, and how to avoid the most dangerous of the planet's creatures. She began to realize that in many ways, the human wasn't just a hunter. He was a survivor, someone who had adapted to this harsh world in ways she hadn't imagined. Through their time together, Lyra learned more about Kale's past. He wasn't just any human. He had been part of a military expedition sent to Zorath, but his ship had crashed, leaving him stranded. As they spent more time together, the bond between them grew stronger. They found themselves relying on each other, their connection shifting from mere survival to something deeper. Despite their differences, they began to see in each other a reflection of themselves, a need for survival, yes, but also something more, a connection that transcended their species. And as they stood together, overlooking the harsh, sprawling landscape of Zorath, Lyra realized that this human, this hunter, this devourer of beasts, was not just a savior. He was a part of her journey now, and the world they had shared, however brutal, had become something far more beautiful than she could have ever imagined.